Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around is my epic rant on the 2015 reboot Vacation. Holiday Road. Now, before I go any further ranting on this failed, misguided reboot, I would like to give a special shout out to Brian for requesting this review. And if there's another review, rant, or discussion on a film or a topic that you would like to see me do in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, here's a funny thing about this movie. When I first saw it, I didn't mind it. I actually thought it was decent. I think probably because of the way that it handled the legacy characters, even though I feel that it could have done a better job in retrospect, but it also could have done an even worse job with Clark and Ellen. So I guess I was just appreciative of the fact that they didn't completely drop the ball when it comes to that cameo. Also, I like the idea of Rusty going on his own vacation from hell with his family. And I liked Christina Applegate, and I still like Christina Applegate in this movie. And I like the scene with Charlie Day as the river raft guide. And I still think that scene is hilarious. And it's arguably the funniest scene in the entire movie. But I guess I just overlooked a lot of the other flaws when I first saw the movie. But the more times I gave this film a watch, the more I started to realize how much of a failure this film is. Not only when it comes to the laughs, which this film is mostly devoid of for the majority of the running time, except for maybe 2 or 3 scenes, but also just the approach. The approach that the script has in terms of handling the source material and dealing with this vacation, and more importantly, the characters. And it just really didn't work for me. And after the most recent watch, I really don't like this film. I think it's a off-putting, just really unpleasant film to watch in multiple different ways. And what's crazy is there was a movie that was also released by New Line that's also an R-rated comedy that came out a couple years before Vacation called We're the Millers that I felt was actually rather fun and kind of reminded me of Vacation, of National Lampoon's Vacation, in terms of the zaniness and the comedy and the misadventure of a group of people on the road. And I don't know why they didn't just take a page from that comedy and apply it to this. Instead, they decided to just make it as shocking as they possibly could and as gross as they possibly can make it. And they felt like that was the peak of comedy for some reason. But that's kind of what a lot of comedy was in the 2010s and what a lot of comedy is still now. It's this shock humor that I think has gone completely stale over the years. And it's not because it's offensive in nature, it's because it's lazy as hell. Now, the film was directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, who also wrote the movie. And Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, they wrote Horrible Bosses, which came out before this reboot. And I think that's a hilarious comedy. I think that's still a good comedy. And they would go on to direct Game Night with Jason Bateman, which I think was one of the best films from that year when that movie was released. I thought that was a clever and witty and really fun comedy. So they are talented writers and they are good directors, but none of that really came to play here. The direction looks like something out of a sitcom. It really does. This movie looks like it's a extended episode of a sitcom or a comedy show on Showtime or something. It really does. It does not look like a feature film. There are a lot of moments where you can tell they're just shooting behind a green screen and they're not actually on a road trip, and it's rather jarring. And there's just a lot of moments where the direction is very flat, very uninspired, very static in terms of the movement of the camera. It feels like the director is limited to a few settings and a few sets, and that's not the case here. So it's just shocking to me that you can have a movie that's a part of a pretty well-known franchise that has a budget of 31 million and it looks like it cost 3 million or less, and it looks like it's just an episode of a TV show. So yeah, and I don't think the directors did the best job working with their cast either and getting the best performances out of them, because when it comes to the family dynamic with the new Griswolds, like they have no chemistry with each other. They are either at odds with one another for the majority of the movie to the point where they are literally fighting, or they're just ignoring one another, or when they're supposed to be enjoying their company, it just comes across as forced and not even genuine. So I think maybe better direction would maybe get more out of these actors and out of these performers, and definitely better writing, which I think that's the biggest crime here is the script. Other than maybe the short little cameo of Clark and Ellen at the bed and breakfast, which even that had its issues with Clark being an asshole and spraying guests with Lysol spray or whatever in the face, and just telling them to leave when they're at dinner, and just being totally the opposite of who Clark is. I still like some of the moments there where he's carrying the grandkids up the stairs, or he has that moment where he fumbles with the guitar, and that's like one of the few scenes where you kind of felt like, okay, like this is at least somewhat respectful to the legacy of the franchise, even though they kind of dropped the ball a little bit with how they wrote Clark, but I could deal with it. Also, there was a nice reappearance of the family truckster for the finale, which I thought was actually kind of clever and a nice moment. But there's a lot of stuff where they try to do a homage to the first movie, and it's just a total failure. The moment with the Ferrari girl, the new Ferrari girl, and I think the older brother is flirting with her, or it's Ed Helms. I forgot who. I mean, it probably was Ed Helms, and she crashes the Ferrari and it explodes because, oh my god, it's so shocking. I didn't see that coming, so it's so funny. And there's just a lot of that humor in this, and it gets very tiresome very early on. With the whole scene where Kevin writes, "My brother has a vagina" on his guitar, and then you have that whole speech where Ed Helms' character Rusty is talking about how it's okay if you have a vagina, and it was just like it just went on for forever, and it was not funny. And then you just carried that kind of humor throughout the movie with Chris Hemsworth and his big giant dick. That's the joke. He just has a giant package and he's showing it in almost every scene. Uh the sequence where Rusty drives headlong into a steer and it explodes and into a bunch of blood and guts. The scene at the hot springs, but it's actually a sewage runoff and they're rubbing each other with shit. The sequence in the bathroom at the hotel where the tub looks like there's a murder that's been committed in it, and they use a ball of pubic hair to try to clean it up. The sorority scene where Christina Applegate's character, she, Debbie, she goes on the chug and run and just pukes profusely over and over and over again. And it's just overdone to the point where it's not funny. It wasn't even that funny to begin with, and you just overdo it to the point where you're just exhausted by the shock humor. The finale where they get in a fight with this other family to get on the roller coaster. And then even the ending of the movie where they get on the roller coaster after they waited hours and they got in a fight to get on it, and then it stalls midway. And that's the shock. Oh, all of this effort with this car that doesn't work and this vacation from hell, and it's nothing. It's completely pointless because they never even got to ride the ride. It's like, what the hell is this script? Like, what was the mindset here? What was the thought process by these writers? It's just they weren't thinking things through. It's almost like they were deliberately trying to write as shitty and as lazy of a reboot of the Vacation franchise as they possibly could. Because I can't think of any other explanation for a lot of this. There are some moments of inspiration, like the scene with Charlie Day as the white water rafting guide who's suicidal after his girlfriend breaks up with him. That scene is hilarious. And this movie needed more of those scenes because there is some shock humor there, but it's actually clever and it's actually funny. And I think a large part it's more due to Charlie Day and his performance than really the writing there. But still, it was a well executed, well structured comedic sequence. Even the slow-mo, which was overdone and overplayed throughout the movie, was actually used well in that scene. But there's just a lot of overplayed bad jokes. The just obsession with this foreign car and this key fob that does things that are abnormal and weird, and they don't know what it does until they press a button, and the whole repeated gag of the GPS that is now speaking in Korean, and the joke is that it's in Korean and it's angry. I'm like, what? I mean, even got Asperger's jokes. You know, like Asperger's syndrome. You have the whole chug and run charity at the sorority is for Asperger's. Get it? You're borrowing jokes from shit like Dumb and Dumber 2 and other like really bad, pathetic, lame comedies. That's not a good sign. And that's not a good approach. That's not a good idea. And then on top of that, just the way these characters are written is just terrible. It's just an absolute just catastrophe. Rusty is completely unlikable. You don't really connect with him in the same way as you did with Clark. I see what they're trying to go for here with Rusty being similar to his father in terms of being a klutz, but he's not a lovable klutz. And his moments of ineptitude are just annoying. Like the stuff where he's trying to be the wingman for his son, or talking about rim jobs, and a lot of this other stuff. And it just leads to a point where you just really don't like this guy. You don't like Rusty like you do Clark, and it just makes a whole chunk of the movie really hard to watch because you don't like this character. The kids are equally as unlikable. You either have a complete and total sociopath in Kevin, who I don't know why they thought this is a great idea, having Kevin Griswold be a psychopath who's trying to strangle his brother to death, and is just a little shit throughout the entire movie until the brother stands up for himself, and then now he's a sweet little angel, but it doesn't really feel like it was earned. And it was just one of those things where, why did we have to deal with that? Why did we have to be subjected to Kevin being a shithead for the majority of the movie and trying to kill his brother with a plastic bag like he's some kind of fucking mafia don or some shit. And on top of that, why did we have to deal with the older brother being a fucking pussy and being a sad sack and a loser and a lame ass as well? Like, you have two extremes. You have James being a total loser, just a wuss, and who even has like uh diaries that he's constantly writing in, and just unable to stand up for himself against his little brother, and it's awkward around girls and stuff like that. And then you have the whole thing with the Kevin being an extreme little shit. And the only member of the new Griswold family that the script, I think, does a somewhat decent job with, other than the chug and run scene, which was embarrassing for Debbie, is Debbie. Because Debbie is a character that you somewhat sympathize with because of what's going on with her marriage. And I just feel there's more weight to that character. And the way that she acts for the most part, and the way that she reacts to things, seems more natural, seems less extreme. And it's just a character that I ultimately don't mind. I think in large part, though, more due to Christina Applegate and her performance, and not necessarily the script. But I will give the screenwriters that. They do a better job with her. They did a bad job with Audrey, made her into a sex-crazed, just bad character who was just more obsessed with her hot husband and riding his dick than anything else. And there are other characters you think might lead to there being more to them, like the airline pilot, Ethan, who's the guy who essentially starts the fight at the end of the movie at Wally World. But other than that one scene at the end, like, there really isn't much to that guy either. And speaking of, guys that there really isn't much to, I mean, of course, Stone Crandall, who the big joke is that he's a himbo, he's a total male bimbo, and he's an idiot, and his biggest defining feature is his giant cock. I mean, speaking of that, you even have a whole scene when the new Griswold family goes to meet Stone Crandall and Audrey, and they have a giant dick drawn on the side of their van, and they're trying to clean it off, and they're rubbing it like they're cupping the balls and stroking the shaft. And I'm like, what is so funny about this? This is just gross and crass, and it's not funny at all. Like the scene where they are trying to fuck in the four corners, and then there's all these other couples that are trying to do it, and then you have this whole scene where all these different cops from a different state, the four different states, get in a hissy fit and argue with one another. And that's another thing, like, a lot of this movie has a lot of arguing and bickering, and it's not fun to watch either. It's just annoying. Like, so much of this movie is so annoying and so obnoxious and so unfunny, and just mostly just nothing but extremes. And most of the time, they are extreme failures because there's not much thought put into them. So yeah, it's a bad script, really bad screenplay. And in some ways, I kind of feel bad for the cast. I mean, there's really not much you can do when it comes to some of these performers. I mean, Ed Helms, he's a capable guy. He was good in the Hangover films, and you could see some moments where he's channeling a bit of Chevy Chase. And I think if the script did a better job making him a more likable character, then I think Ed Helms' performance would be more good. It would be stronger. It would be something that you would definitely enjoy more. But with what he's given to work with, the character of Rusty is just an unlikable ass most of the time. And I think that's a big reason why none of the original Rusties wanted to do this movie, even though a lot of them could have. Like, what was Ethan Embry doing? Like, Anthony Michael Hall wasn't booked to the gills when it comes to his schedule. So it's one of those things where it's like, you couldn't get any of them, probably because they read the script and like, Rusty seems like a dickhead. I don't want to be Rusty if he's going to be like that. And I mentioned Christina Applegate, but I'll mention her again. She tries the best that she can to try to salvage this shitty movie, but there's only so much that she can do. And what she does here is still quite a bit, because I like this character. I like Debbie. And she's the only member of the new family that I actually like or even remotely give a shit about. And I feel bad because Christina Applegate, she's actually trying. She's trying to make this work, and it just doesn't happen. Just like the repeated gag of them singing Seal, Kiss from a Rose. Yeah, Kiss from a Rose by Batman Forever. Like, they keep trying to make that a thing, and it just never is a thing. And that whole bit felt like they were just ripping this off. You know, with the whole chasing waterfalls bit in this? And it was done a lot better in Where the Millers as well. Like, pretty much everything else was when it comes to comparing the two movies. And Ed Helms is in that movie too. And Jason Sudeikis, who was the lead in Where the Millers, he was actually considered to be Rusty in this film. He probably passed because he's like, I did that movie already. I did a vacation film already. It was called Where the Millers. And this is worse. But yeah, Christina Applegate, bless her soul, she tried. It just wasn't meant to be. Skyler Gisondo is James Griswold. Like I said, the script lets these performers down. He does a good job playing a sad sack wussy character, but it's one of those things where it's like, this is what you're giving this actor to work with, and you're expecting it to be a memorable, strong character. Not going to happen, because this character is just so much of a wuss for so much of the movie that you just don't like this guy. You're just waiting for him to grow some balls, and then when he finally does, even then they undermine it when it comes to the fight scene where he just scratches the girl. So they don't even go all the way with it. Kevin, played by Steele Stebbins, yeah, he plays a good little shit, but that's still not something that I want to watch. And when it comes to the moments when he's supposed to be a little sweetheart, like that, it was completely not even remotely believable. It's like buying Dennis the Menace when Dennis the Menace has his turn in that Dennis the Menace movie where he's supposed to be sweet and charming. I was like, that kid is a total terror for a majority of the movie. Now I'm supposed to buy that he's just some misunderstood kid who just needed some love. Like, come on, really? Chris Hemsworth, total fucking waste of space, waste of people's time. He's just there to look hot and have a big dick. Haha, wow. Just as amazing of a performance as his performance as another himbo in Ghostbusters from 2016. Leslie Mann, seen her do a lot better and a lot of other things. As Audrey, nothing performance, but then again, given nothing to work with other than I'm horny and I want to bang Chris Hemsworth every second of the movie. Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo, it's fun to see those two again. They still have some decent chemistry, but it's sad because it's like, why don't we have more of them? Why don't we have more of Clark and Ellen? Why didn't you have this be a road trip where Clark and Ellen go along with Rusty and his family, and calamity ensues, and it becomes this whole sort of thing where Rusty was having a falling out with his dad, and through this vacation, he learns to appreciate and respect his father again. Like, I think that could have been fun. That could have been, a nice little passing of the torch moment, as well as a nice, legitimate sequel to the other vacation films. I mean, things are bad when the advertisement short film that uh, Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo did for some kind of hotel booking website, which was called Vacation Hotel Hell, that was released in, like, I think it was like 2010 or something. That is funnier and just feels more in tune with the spirit of Vacation than this entire reboot. Like, that is really pathetic when a 14-minute long advertisement is better than your feature length movie. There are some other performers in the cast that I don't really think are worth mentioning, but I'll mention them. Like Norman Reedus as this truck driver who's stalking the Griswold family and is trying to give back Debbie's ring because she lost it. But then it's also insinuated that he also might be a pedo. So, because there was this whole, like, running gag about him being a pedo, another lame attempt at shock humor. Keegan-Michael Key is in this as a friend of the Griswolds, and he has a brief scene in the beginning with him and Regina Hall. Tim Heidecker, Nick Kroll, Caitlin Olsen, they're in this as the cops at the Four Corners. Hannah Davis Jeter plays the girl in the red Ferrari. You also have Ron Livingston, who plays Ethan, the airline pilot rival. Charlie Day, I gotta mention him, and I saved him for last when it comes to this cast because he was so hilarious as a suicidal river rafting guide. The way that he just performed that scene was perfect, and I crack up every time that I think of that scene. And yeah, he stole the movie. He really did. He stole the entire film. The cinematography by Barry Peterson, very average, very mid. Same goes for the editing by Jamie Gross. It features music by Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, and there's even like a new Wally World theme at the end credits, but it's obnoxious and terrible, just like the movie, so it's honestly kind of fitting. Most of the music is just pretty blasé, pretty just lame. But I do think the use of Air Supply's I Can't Live Without You is absolutely amazing. I thought it was great in the suicidal river rafting scene. That was a moment that was really inspired and really added to the comedy of that sequence. But a lot of the time, the music doesn't add anything. It just adds more irritation because you're like, why are you dragging down Seal with this repeated just shoving of Kiss from a Rose down people's throats with bad singing from this cast? Why are we trying to push some kind of rap song that doesn't fit the tone of this movie, doesn't fit this franchise, and it's just obnoxious to listen to? Probably because we want to make this movie as obnoxious as humanly possible. We want to make this movie the equivalent of bathing in sewage. So, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about the film, except, yeah, it's an absolute total failure. It's a failure in execution. It's a failure of a reboot because it didn't do well enough critically or financially to lead to any more vacation films. It's a failure of a sequel because it's sad because this Rusty turns into an obnoxious asshole who doesn't really learn that much and doesn't know what a rim job is. And then you have just a comedy that just isn't funny. And it missed what made the other vacation films, at least the ones that were considered quality, so effective, so charming, so much fun to watch. And it just drops the ball on pretty much every level. It really, in a lot of ways, is a lot like a car crash. It's, or like a train wreck of a comedy, and the kind of one where you don't really want to keep watching it. You really want to look away. And yeah, I really don't know what else to say about this vacation, except it's definitely not a road trip that I ever want to go on ever again. And thanks for watching my rant. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.